Hey Healing Family, I'm checking in today from this beautiful mindfulness garden here, and I just wanted to have a little conversation and kind of explore a little bit about where brain retraining and medicine, Western medicine, holistic healing, where they all really come together and why it's so important to understand how the interplay of brain retraining and your limbic system correlates with other healing modalities. So I've talked about this a little bit before on my channel, but I think it's a really important message because we are getting different messaging from different programs, from different coaches out there, and I'm not disagreeing with anyone. I think that different modalities work for different people, but I'm seeing a lot of messaging about once you're doing brain retraining, that's all you need to heal. And I think that can be, I hesitate to use this word too much, but I've said it before, it can be a little bit of toxic positivity or almost reverse medical gaslighting, right? So many of us for so long have struggled to heal, and that's how we find limbic system healing and brain retraining. When we find something that works and we attach to it and it gives us results, it becomes very easy to discredit anything else and to feel like this is the only way. I think brain retraining and limbic system regulation, nervous system healing, the awareness of what this does to our immune system, to our inflammation, to our mindset, I think it is the missing link in so much of what we are missing in Western medicine and in healthcare today. However, having worked for so long within the Western medical model, working in hospitals, having recent experiences where we hadn't gone to conventional medicine doctors in years, and then we were pretty much forced to, based on my daughter having a traumatic injury, I am starting to notice where we need to do some work around this intersection between healing our limbic system, retraining our brain, but also integrating in other healing practices. And I want to address this because I think some people get confused. I will post videos talking about symptoms. I will post videos talking about diagnoses and herbalism and detoxification protocols. And so many people that run other specific brain retraining programs are very strict about there's no symptom talk, there's no diagnosis talk, you don't need any of these other things, you don't need detoxes and supplements and herbalism or Western medicine. But I think that becomes almost the same problem you have in Western medicine. We've all approached Western medicine doctors that discredit the holistic world and say, nope, all you need is this pill and you're fine. All you need is leave all that behind, none of that works, you just need this one thing. But we're almost doing the opposite if we discredit all the other things that might give us some benefit and we say you only need limbic system healing, you only need brain retraining, that is it, do not do anything else. So how do we allow some curiosity to see how we can make an integration, right? The whole purpose of saying holistic healing is we are looking at not just the whole person, the mind, body, spirit, but we are looking at the whole system and the microcosm and the macro of which we live, our environment, our triggers and our positives and our strengths and our supports. So an example of this could be, someone comes in, and I'll give an example of myself actually. Coming into brain retraining, finding it so transformative for myself, having had years of, the wrong kinds of Western medicine support, which is what turns most of us away from that in the beginning, and finally getting a real diagnosis from a more functional provider, finding out that I had Lyme, chronic Epstein-Barr, Bartonella, Babesia, tick-borne relapsing fever, hypermobile EDS, POTS, all of these things, right? Like, initially it was overwhelming, and initially I did kind of go down the rabbit hole, and I do feel like I over-identified in a lot of ways with these diagnoses. The more I read about them, and I spiraled out of control, and the doctors were fear-mongering me that I had developed MS and all of these things, I actually physically felt the worst that I had felt. I was like, wow, I finally have an answer, and that felt good temporarily. But then I felt worse. I felt so bad physically. I was just like deteriorating so quickly and desperate for answers, trying every supplement, every holistic thing, paying all this money for specialists and doctors. And I think that's where many of us go. And so when I discovered brain retraining and limbic system healing, it felt so interesting and amazing and freeing to me that I could let go of diagnosis, that the root cause of all my dysfunction was my nervous system, my limbic system, my thought process. And as a licensed therapist, as a yoga teacher, as someone who has worked in really high acuity trauma work for a long time, it all clicked. It made a lot of sense. Not only did I understand how trauma can impact people and epigenetics, but I knew that I had been exposed to a lot of, personal trauma, vicarious trauma, working in, really high acuity mental health settings for a long time had really messed with my nervous system. And I've talked about that a little before as well. But I think what is so interesting here is I did what everyone else did initially. I was like, I don't need any of this other stuff. I don't need supplements. I don't need to do more doctor's appointments. I don't need anything like that. This brain retraining is where it's at, right? Because for the first couple of weeks of committing to doing the practice rounds, doing the mindful movement, getting out in nature, doing all of these things, I was feeling really good. It was like this adrenaline high of like, wow, this is working. I feel so good. My nervous system is regulating. I'm noticing all these signs that it's regulating. But what was interesting as well is I think I was neglecting parts of my health and my healing, and holistically speaking, things that probably were still useful to anyone, no matter what limbic system state they're in. And there were times where, I would still go in and check in with my functional doctor or my primary doctor, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm feeling great. But then they'd ask more pointed questions or do some lab work, and I'd be like, oh, well, yeah, I guess it does make sense if that lab level's off, because I am kind of feeling this symptom a little bit, but I've been trying so hard to not be symptom focused, I didn't really notice it. And sometimes there would be like really high infection markers or inflammation markers or vitamin deficiencies or things, and I'm like, I wonder how much of that came about because I was feeling so good with brain retraining and limbic system work that I was letting other things fall to the wayside. And it almost reminded me, I have a lot of clients, just in the strict mental health world, not even in the limbic system world, where they kind of dissociate or are in denial about having a diagnosis, to the point where when things are going good in their life, they stop taking meds, whether it's psych meds or physical health meds like diabetes meds or whatever the case may be. And it works really good for a while because everything else in their life is going really well. So they feel awesome. They're riding that wave of like feeling really good. But inevitably, when other triggers come forward, they crash. And they realize, okay, how do I, after a couple times of going through that cycle, they realize, what do I need to do to admit that maybe I do need a little extra support from either conventional medicine or holistic medicine, and to do certain things daily that keep me at a good baseline so that I can still enjoy the highs and lows of like the positive things in my life. And when I feel good, but I don't want to have these inevitable crashes. And I began to wonder, with brain retraining and limbic system healing, are we kind of setting people up to have inevitable failures or crashes if we have this mindset that brain retraining and limbic system healing is all you need? Forget everything else. It's very dogmatic. And not in every program, right? But in a lot of programs, it's very dogmatic. There are certain groups on Facebook that are like, if you post a symptom, if you post a diagnosis, it is like you get jumped all over because people are so obsessive and dogmatic about, you can't mention symptoms, that's not in the rules. Well, we need to loosen up a little bit. There is no rule book. Just because one program said it was bad, or you personally have that bad experience because you're at a point in your healing where it really triggers you to hear a symptom or hear a diagnosis, it doesn't mean that there's never a place for it in the healing process. So something that I've been kind of looking at and toying with the idea and talking to other people in this space is, what if we kept the concept that limbic system healing, brain retraining are one of the baseline keys, the foundational aspects of healing, but that it's not a standalone, right? So brain retraining and limbic system work is the foundation. If we do not have that, do you know about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs from psychology? It might be a little outdated. I went to grad school a million years ago, but the idea that if your basic needs aren't met, you can never move up to higher order goals and self-introspection and self-actualization, it's the same thing. Like if we don't have a regulated nervous system and limbic system, and if we don't put in the positive psychology tools and the brain retraining, thought reprogramming, cognitive behavior therapy tools, then we'll never get to a point where we can start engaging back in the healthy relationship-focused, polyvagal theory-focused world. And if we don't have all of those, then maybe the detoxes and the supplements and the herbs and the holistic therapies don't work. And that's where we end up in this hamster wheel. But I think there's still a place where a lot of people will end up needing some sort of supportive therapies. And the more that we push those away and say we only need this thing, could we be setting ourselves up for failure? I don't think it's the case with everyone. I think for some people, their limbic system, their thought process was probably 99% of the problem. And once they address it, they do unlock so many new layers of health that maybe they never need to do any other supportive practices. But we don't want to let that become dogmatic to the point where we're doing harm to others who do still need some other healing. So an example for me that I may have talked about before on here is, even after doing limbic system healing for years and having my own course and doing all this work, when I got some new lab work done, some of my infection markers for Lyme and tick-borne infections and, inflammation and things had gone up. And I had kind of noticed, like, after that initial burst of feeling good with brain retraining, I had kind of come down and I kind of plateaued. And I had other triggers, other things going on in my life that brain retraining can't necessarily heal completely. I have spinal stenosis and, and arthritis, and the way that my back is, brain retraining really does a great job of helping me with pain management, but it's not going to take away bone spurs and decompress my spinal cord, right? With Lyme disease, I feel so much better and more functional using the skills I use every day, but I don't want to neglect and ignore the fact and positive gaslight my way into pushing myself so far and ignoring that I have maybe an active infection that could benefit really well from using other modalities. And maybe the secret to having success with that is my limbic system is healed, I am open, I am receptive to other treatments working. So now if I do the rebounder and do the juices and take the supplements and do the red light mat and the sauna and whatever, now my body is in a place where it is capable of healing and letting go of its old story and opening up to healing. And my mitochondria and my DNA and all of these things that contribute to our healing are at a place that they can be receptive to deeper healing and different modalities. And so I think we should have more conversation around this. And I do not purport to be the expert on every single piece of this puzzle, because every single person's healing story is different. And this is why I think some people will go to the ends of the earth saying, raw veganism healed all my issues, what's wrong with you? And then you're going to find 10 other people saying, carnivore healed all my issues, why would you ever eat differently? Paleo healed my issues. I don't think anyone's wrong. I think everyone's unique story and body and life and triggers and environment and limbic system is so different that they all might be telling the truth for their truth. And who are we to tell someone that that's not true for them? But what happens is when people become so dogmatic that then they are trying to push that belief on you and trying to convince you this is the only way to heal, you're no longer listening to your intuition. Your limbic system is on high alert because now you think the only way to heal is to approach this overly obsessive, restrictive way of being because everyone told you you had to and there was no way to heal without it. I don't want to see the brain retraining community turn into that same sort of space. I think we need to keep this idea of safety and compassion and empathy and acceptance and experimentation and curiosity of what works for my limbic system might not work for yours. And part of the reason I bring this up is I've seen a lot of people recently talking about how a lot of the popular brain retraining programs and some somatics programs and even some PTSD treatments like with EMDR, a lot of these rely on eye movement exercises. And a lot of these programs market this as like, you have to do this to heal. This is the only way you'll heal. This is the best way to treat trauma. A lot of people have a very negative reaction to eye movement exercises, and that could be for a number of reasons, right? My daughter had a traumatic brain injury. The hardest part of her recovery has been in PT. Eye movement at all is really excruciatingly, like, it hurts her. She gets a migraine. She feels really anxious. That can be a result of having brain trauma. That can be a result if you have autoimmune encephalitis, if you have migraines, if you have epilepsy. There is not a one-size-fits-all for any intervention. And when programs try to push one thing as you have to do this or you won't heal, they're not your doctor. They don't know your medical history, and it's a little dangerous to act like you have to do something that makes you feel uncomfortable or unsafe. Your intuition, you know what's best for you. You know if something's making you feel unsafe or icky or if it isn't working. So the same thing with visualizations and healing rounds. I have people commenting all the time saying, well, I don't have any positive past memories. I can't do that part of the visualization. That's okay. Make something up or just skip that part. Like, this is not something that is been researched in labs and replicated for 50 years where it's like, you have to do a past visualization to heal this. So do the part that is helpful for you in that moment and focus your intention and your energy on what feels right for you, what feels like it's going to give you the most healing, and take what works and leave the rest. It doesn't mean you can never do it, but maybe it's not going to work for you right now. And instead of judging yourself or feeling like, well, then none of this is going to work for me, I would rather see someone come in and be like, oh, I love these tools that you gave me. All of these ones worked so well. I'm going to start using them. I feel really good. But I'm also still going to see my acupuncturist, and I'm going to take some herbs, and I'm going to make up my own script that feels a little better to me. This is what we should be doing. We should be encouraging ourselves to listen to our intuition, to listen to the parts of our nervous system and our brain that are telling us what they actually need, not forcing anything, not letting anyone else dictate what we need in our lives, because that's also trauma, right? Someone telling you what you need to do to heal that you don't know your own body, that can be a form of trauma. And it can cause more dysregulation. And anything that's too restrictive or telling you have to do it a certain way, that is signaling your amygdala that there is danger in how you're doing things. And the goal is to take that away, to signal safety, to tell your amygdala it's safe, what you're doing is working, we're going to just try something new today, we're going to explore. If that doesn't feel good, awesome, we'll back off a little bit, right? It's okay, amygdala, don't panic. If that doesn't feel good, we don't have to do that right now. Why don't we try that breath work? Why don't we try to sit out in nature? Why don't we try some yoga? So finding ways to make space for individual differences within brain retraining, finding ways to come up with a holistic framework where the brain and limbic work that we're doing is in conjunction with anything else that you need, that you feel that you still need to be doing, that your providers are telling you that you still need to be doing. I'm a firm believer that this is really where that deeper work is going to come from, and deeper healing is going to come from, and we're going to open up the brain retraining and limbic system community to include people who want to still have a mix of different modalities, different ways of approaching this, and people who do have certain illnesses that still require other medical interventions, other spiritual interventions, other psychological interventions. We don't want them to feel excluded from brain retraining because they're like, oh, well, I really wanted to do that and it did work for me, but this coach or this program told me that if I'm doing brain retraining, I shouldn't need anything else, and I do, and so I feel like a failure, right? Like, no one should ever feel like that. And I would love to see some discussion on this in the comments and to hear what your opinions are on this, what your experience has been on this. And it's okay if you don't agree with me, and it's okay if limbic system healing is all you needed. I'd love to hear about that too, because that's a really valid experience for a lot of people. But I just thought like it would be an interesting conversation to have. So I hope you all have a wonderful and blessed day, just full of so much healing, and I will talk to you guys all very soon. Bye.